Okay, so if we asked you what was the most valuable camp out of Raptors, Krugs, and Wolves, what would you say? Most would probably answer Krugs, and while you're not wrong, you're not exactly right either. Low elo players tend to value Krugs extremely highly, while challenger and professional level players put them on the back burner. So what's going on here? Why the difference? In this video, we're going to explain to you why this is the case, and use some of my own solo queue in High Grandmaster, as well as the entire Gen G versus G2 series at the World Championships. Just so you know, we're not cherry picking any examples here. Krugs do give the most golden XP out of any camp, so that's their main upside. However, the benefits kinda end there, and then we get to a long list of negatives. You might be thinking, well, why else would I do a jungle camp other than for golden XP? And we'll answer that. Let's look at a game of my solo queue first to get started. In this game, I'm playing Lilia versus Kayn. Both of these junglers are great AoE clearers with pretty quick clear speeds, so if either of us wanted to full clear and get to Crab around 315, we definitely could. However, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Kayn opts to go for a full clear in this game, while having full vision of me going blue to Wolves and skipping my Gromp. Take a second to think about why this could be a downside. While Krugs does give the most golden XP, they also take the longest to do. Junglers, more so than any other role in the game, need to try and find the best balance between time spent and positive impact on the game. You're always juggling the idea of doing camps versus ganking versus objectives, etc. Because of this, I tend to think about jungling in terms of a prioritized list of options and things to do. For example, let's just list out the possible proactive things Kayn could do on topside once he finishes a clear. He could go for top crab, gank or counter gank mid, gank or counter gank top, invade topside, go back for bottom crab, or reset. If I'm Kayn, I begin weighing these options against each other and prioritizing what I think is most valuable. So for instance, if I think my top matchup is extremely important to get ahead, I might move a top gank higher up on the list. In addition, we also should consider how likely an option is to work. Let's say both of your solo laners have no priority. Obviously getting crab would be pretty nice, but it's not super likely to work out in this case. So if it becomes impossible, we don't really mind. We just move on to the next thing on our list, and this makes us really efficient with our time. The number one mistake all League players make is just wasting precious seconds instead of moving to the next play right away. Obviously, the list in our head needs to change based on what's going on in the game. But junglers have to predict ahead somewhat because you start your clear at 130, but will have no idea what your lanes will look like when you actually leave your jungle. We need to have multiple plays, just in case one or most of them fail. If you lose the ability to do anything on your list, well, you can't be proactive for a bit, which is pretty bad when trying to win a game. When we have a list of things to do, we can figure out how each of our decisions impact each option positively or negatively. By doing Krugs, Kayn starts to lower the likelihood of all of his possible plays. Both junglers are actually using an extremely similar list here to figure out what to do next because they're pathing into the same side. However, now I have a massive pacing advantage on Kayn. By doing Krugs and trying to full clear, he puts himself about 20 to 25 seconds behind whatever I want to do. If I was to do a faster path to topside and pick any of the options on this list, it would probably work out in my favor because I will always get there first. This timing is also extremely important because the cannon wave meets in side lane around 237, and it's on this wave that your lanes can be dove if the enemy was slow pushing, as well as the wave that you can use the third wave recall strategy on. By using those 20 seconds on Krugs and full clearing, we are now unable to ever react to a hypothetical dive or gank top on this crucial wave, eliminating those options from our list. Obviously, if I had full cleared as well, none of this would be an issue, but we don't want to have to rely on the enemy just not punishing us. It's much better to just not allow them to have an option to in the first place. Now let's look at what actually happened. I finished my red buff and immediately moved into the enemy jungle to invade. We had planned ahead for Renekton to control the wave and crash on the third one, so he is easily able to move while Camille is stuck under tower catching minions. I steal away Kayn's blue and Gromp and then take top crab. Had Kayn opted to skip Krugs and instead just cleared up from red, he could have been done with Gromp by now and would have been able to just leave his jungle, not worried about losing any of his camps. By doing Krugs, he put himself too far behind in pacing and left himself vulnerable to a counterplay. Now with a level lead, I look to continue to punish the Kayn, crossing map to contest double crab, and with Lucian's first move and my individual lead, we're able to win the fight and deny Kayn the crab. If we look back at the list of options that Kayn had before this point, he literally couldn't accomplish any of them, just due to the fact that he decided to take Krugs on his first clear. At this point, his game is pretty much over. I have a 2-level lead, 800 gold advantage, and a full jungle item on my first recall when I want it. Pacing is definitely one of the biggest reasons why Krugs has fallen out of favor, and hopefully this last example showed that. Now to prove that it's not just me who feels like this, let's look at Gen G versus G2 and see how both junglers path in the games. In game 1, we've got a Lilia piloted by Klid versus a Nidalee piloted by Jankos. Nidalee decides to skip Krugs this game. Because of this, she is already in river before Lilia is done with her 5th camp. Lilia did Krugs and even skipped her wolves as a way to counterplay Nidalee's invade onto her blue or Gromp. Had she chosen to full clear here, the invade was very possible. Jankos having better pacing means he would be in time to counter a potential top gank while Camille shoves her cannon wave and sets up for the fight at top crab. He weighs these things more heavily on his list of options than the golden XP from Krugs. Unfortunately, Caps isn't able to beat BDD in the Prio War and Azir moves first, foiling the plan for top crab. Here's where Krugs is actually good to do. When you go through your list of options and try the more important ones and they fail, you want to have backups. Nidalee is already on top side and wants to hover Camille so that Volley and Lilia can't dive. Krugs lets her be efficient, giving her a dual purpose of being in Camille's shadow while still giving gold and XP in the meantime. Because Lilia did Krugs on the first clear, she was forced to leave her wolves up, respecting Nidalee's invade pressure. This means that Nidalee would actually have camp advantage had top grab gone Jankos' way. Obviously, the ensuing fight has nothing to do with pathing and more about mechanical execution, so let's not try to be too results based here when there definitely were tons of other variables at play. Another critical point to mention is that the location of Krugs is an extremely bad downside. It's by far the most isolated camp on the map, where terrain makes it difficult to access other areas. It's the hardest to travel to other lanes from and influence the game, as well as the hardest to invade. As such, because it's such an isolated camp, you'll often see side laners take them later in the game, just so that the jungler without TP can be where they need to be later. It's pretty impossible to be at Krugs, but also pressuring a neutral objective. By heavily cycling your Krugs camp in favor of another, you are heavily incentivized to go to the outer corners of the map more often to claim the leveled up XP. Instead of the other camps where it's easier to get to river, the opposite jungle, your other camps, lanes, or just generally do anything proactive on the map. If Nidalee had gone to take Krugs here, her team wouldn't have been able to pressure the enemy bot side jungle and set up vision for the dragon happening in a minute. Let's jump back into the game after the big fight. In the time that it takes Lilia to reset and do her Krugs, Jankos has already done wolves and Gromp is on map ready to pressure lanes. Jankos' camps are worth more than Lilia's now due to cycled camp XP, and he actually takes camp advantage back moments later in this game due to Lilia's wolf camp being skipped, putting him in a great position to get a level lead over Lilia. While it's subtle, remember that this is some of the absolute highest level of play possible. The advantages you see here aren't nearly as big as the ones you'll see in solo queue. In game 2, we've got the same matchup, but the players have switched champions. Klid does the exact same path that Jankos did in the previous game, skipping Krugs and getting to the crab right on time in order to secure a double scuttle. Meanwhile, Jankos goes for an insanely fast cheese level 3 gank bot, giving away his access to top camps, topside gank, and topside crab. So in this situation, he has to settle for Krugs at this point as the last remaining option, the price he pays for his gank. If Klid hadn't skipped Krugs, there's a chance that Jankos could have gotten to top crab and then cleared his whole topside, going even in camps. Jumping right into game 3, we see the most clear-cut example of why skipping Krugs is so important. Jankos skips his Krugs and pass up. Meanwhile, Kindred's solo starts red and unbeknownst to G2 immediately looks for an invade onto Jankos' blue and Gromp. If Jankos had done Krugs here, Kindred would have gotten both camps and had a huge lead over Graves. However, skipping Krugs quite literally could have saved this game, as it makes Klid's pathing extremely awkward when Graves secures his Gromp. Most of Jankos' camps are respawning now, while none of Kindred's are. It might not be super apparent with the levels right now, but on the second clear, this is really going to hurt Klid. He also isn't able to protect his Raptors from Jankos' invade, and due to Krugs' location, Kindred would be very hard pressed to actually invade to evenly trade back on the other side of the map. As the game goes on, Jankos only extends his camp advantage more. This would have been a much different story had he chosen to do Krugs on his first clear. G2 goes on to win the series 3-0, so this is the last game we're using in this string of examples. However, if you look at any of the other games or series at Worlds, you'll see pretty similar pathing decisions being made. Once again, we're not trying to say to never do Krugs, but it's really important to consider the downside of the camp, especially when a full series is played out at Worlds and every single game at least one of the players skips Krugs. These are world-class junglers, so even if you don't take my word for it, just look at them. We hope this video was informative and shed some light onto why great junglers make the decisions that they do. Leave a comment below telling us just how this impacted your game, and we'll see you in the next videos. Until next time, and thanks for watching.